The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. I love talking to her, and I learned so much. Annemarie Cabri has had a performing career that's taken her across world stages, from audiences in Europe to large-scale productions in Tokyo. Her training, which has spanned the National Ballet School of Canada to Le Monde Dance Company in New York, has instilled in her a blend of the classical elegance of traditional ballet with the humanity and grounding storytelling of modern dance. These are elements she incorporates into her teaching philosophy today. She's one of the few Canadian teachers to master brain-compatible dance education, which I don't feel qualified to explain, but she can, and we'll talk about it in this episode because it's so fascinating. And she channels her rich experiences with dance into her career as a senior teaching artist for both the National Ballet of Canada and the Canadian Opera Company. Not only does she keep the art of dance alive on stage, but she also lights up classrooms, school gymnasiums, art galleries, hospitals, and even public spaces, inviting everyone from dance novices to seasoned performers to experience the transformative power of movement. Annemarie is also licensed to teach the Silver Swans community through the Royal Academy of Dance. Through these two programs, she teaches Silver Swans Shy Ballet and Silver Swans Gliding Ballet. She teaches adults who have either studied ballet as a child and are returning to it, or who are brand new to ballet altogether. She says she believes that dance is not just an art form, but a way to ignite creative thinking, build community, and boost well-being among adult dancers. We talked about her career, her innovative teaching methods, and how she's seen dance shaping lives, including her own. Check out our conversation. Hi, Annemarie.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I was really excited when you reached out to me. I love all of the work that you're doing. And so I think we're going to have a really good conversation. I was just wondering, for any of our listeners, because, obviously I know all about your background, but anyone who's not familiar with you, could you just kind of talk about some of the work that you do with the National Ballet of Canada, as well as your company?
Yes. For the National Ballet, I'm in their community engagement program. So I develop the programs that go out into the community for the teachers, so the dance artists who go out at the beginning of the season. I think about what the repertoire the apprentice dancers are doing, because our education program's linked up with the apprentices. And so depending on their repertoire, I use the music and the movements and do adapted versions to create a workshop that will be done in school gyms with the students and teachers in the communities that we go to. And then, I do a number of things. I'm also right at the moment working in the rehabilitation children's hospital here called Bloorview, giving those children and teachers and assistant teachers the exposure to dance in an adapted way. So I create that program and deliver it. I also do audience engagement. So in the foyer of the theater at Nutcracker season, for instance, I will do something with the people attending in the intermission. Those are some of the things I do for the company.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was really excited to talk to you because you do so many different things. You sent me your most recent newsletter and my mind was blown because you're so busy and you're doing so many different things. And it's also great to make ballet, more accessible and to expose people to ballet who might not have the opportunity otherwise. So I just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing. And I want to dig into it a little bit more, but I want to talk about your career first, because I know that you've had a really successful career performing with the Dutch National Ballet, working with contemporary dance companies like Le Monde Dance Company in New York. Can you talk about some of the most memorable moments from your time performing, and then what sort of led you to transition into teaching?
Yeah, so I was trained as a ballet dancer here in Toronto at the National Ballet School, and then went, as you said, to the Dutch National. And there we had 3 house choreographers at the time, the director Rudy van Danzig, along with Tour van Schaik and Hans van Manen. So they created, a new work every year, plus all the Balanchine and all the classical works. So there was, I was exposed to a lot, which was absolute excitement and joy. And then I started doing more and more contemporary work, either with guests coming in or among those choreographers. And that, I was sort of leaning into that. And I had an experience with I was never dancing with the Limon Company, but I had exposure at 16 in a summer intensive with someone from the Limon Company, and I was chosen to do one of the solos, and that was my sort of in the back of my mind. And then when I reacquainted myself in New York, I did some training over several visits during our off periods. I would go and train in New York and was exposed again to the Limon technique, which I just felt very at home in and loved. So I started doing more of that. And so after the Dutch National, I returned to Canada on the West Coast, though, and worked with a contemporary company. And there we had pieces from Lara Lubovitch. It was a small 10-member contemporary company, Judith Marcu's dance repertory company. And she had people from all over the world, Lara Lubovitch and Mark Morris and all kinds of people come to do either set work on us that they'd already created. And then she created a lot of work. So yeah, that's how I sort of was exposed to all of that. And then I ended up in Victoria on Vancouver Island and started a family. And that's when I fell in love with the very simplest of our movements, watching my babies on the floor. And then I met an incredible dance educator called Anne Green Gilbert, and learned about all these very formative movements that are so important to making our brain at its full potential for learning, best learning. And that's been my fascination ever since. So I've been doing it for a long time, and coming back to ballet. And in your introduction, you were speaking about, how you're interested in how I make, the accessible programs I deliver. But it's also for people who have had ballet or who have never had ballet as an adult, and how to make it a joyful, easeful experience. Because sometimes people in my generation, had ballet, which was, not maybe a joyful class experience, and the whole body image situation. So it's interesting that I've sort of, to myself, that I've looped back to, because I stayed away from ballet for a long time because of the ballet culture and all that sort of hierarchy, all of that didn't interest me any longer. And now I'm right back in it.
There's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm so grateful that things are changing. And I think, people like you are so invaluable to the ballet community, helping to make those positive changes, because that is a common sentiment on this podcast that, needing to take a break from ballet for a while because of some of the culture. And I'm just happy that you're pushing the art form forward. And I love that story because it shows how dance just kind of touches every aspect of our lives, in starting a family and observing the movement of your babies. It kind of gave you this inspiration. And I'm really fascinated. I was reading all about the work that you do with brain compatible dance education. And I think it's a really fascinating topic. And I know that I read you're one of a few teachers in Canada with extensive training in this. So could you kind of talk a little bit more about what that method involves and how it sort of benefits dancers?
Yes. So the movements are broken down into 8 basic, what we call movement patterns. So they could be thought of as exercises. And it starts with when we are born. So if you are born, hopefully, without any trouble, the first movement your brain and body have to connect and perform is breathing without any trouble. And so we take that very seriously. There are many other forms out there to get us to breathe in all kinds of different ways, deep breathing, shallow breathing. And that breath starts the very first stimulation for our brain's growth out of the womb. And then the next pattern is tactile. So baby is being picked up. The next one is startle reflex, which a baby does to, it's the biggest movement they can do before they get to travel and run away from something dangerous or fearful. So these patterns go along like that in baby's development. And the whole point of these movements, besides, bringing our brain to a point where we can be at our most developed, intricate thoughts and decision making that we do as humans, is also survival. So, we are needing to run away or get away to survive is the idea here. These movements are done in a specific sequence in a dance class, and they are done to whatever ability is in front of you, the age appropriate, all of those things. So they can be built into an hour-long class, or it can be the start of a class just for 5 minutes.
That's great. Yeah, I think this is really interesting. And it shows that, movement is obviously very intuitive, from the time that you're born, you're moving. And I think that's probably why people connect with dance so much is because it's such a human thing. It's so intrinsic. And so I think it's cool to learn all about how kind of some of these formative movements as a baby kind of translate into, a life in ballet or into the classroom. And I'm curious the ways that you've seen this approach to teaching kind of impact ballet dancers' cognitive or emotional well-being in the studio as well.
So the patterns are also, they've been studied. I'm not such an expert on that, but they've been studied from a psychological point of view. So for instance, body half is our decision-making pattern. So some of knowing these patterns and knowing how they are in the sequence of our development, I've seen that. I'm thinking of the adults that I teach because they're the ones who perhaps give me the most feedback on this. And I've seen the emotional, the confidence building, the posture change from having done these movements. I know it sort of sounds kind of simple maybe, but over time, I really have seen that. And also in the ballet class, for instance, you take a movement like an exercise like a rond de jambe, which is if you're at the bar, your one half of you will be stable, the other is expressive. And so again, that's the body half pattern. So helping your student with a simple visual and physical experience of it, and then making it more complicated in a ballet technique, I found that really gives your students the understanding of the base and the reason for these movements like a technique like ballet. So I've seen that really sink in and ground people into an understanding of the technique that, from the outset can be, it looks complicated and fancy and yeah.
Yeah. And the terminology, people get hung up on, the terms and the complex movements. But yeah, I love what you said about it building confidence and seeing in the studio those changes in posture, just the way that people carry themselves. Because I was reading an article recently, I can't remember where I read it. I'll have to try to find it and link it, about how mastering a skill can go a long way toward developing confidence. Obviously ballet is so complex and it's a never ending pursuit. So I don't know that we can ever truly master it. But I think there's something to be said for, as an adult dancer, seeing this art form that looks so complex from the outside and is very complex, but then being able to see those changes and the improvements that you're making in the studio, I can imagine would go a long way in other areas of your life toward building confidence as well. And I know that you work with a lot of adults, and that's, the audience for this podcast. So I talk to a lot of adult dancers who feel sort of apprehensive about starting ballet later in life, or even just coming back to it after a break, like we talked about at the beginning. So I'm curious what advice you would have for them based on your experience teaching the adult population.
It's getting into the studio that's the hardest thing, to know that if a class is being offered for an adult, that it's set up for you to walk in and feel comfortable. There is something for everyone to take away. I often say also that you don't have to come and do everything. Watching other people dance in the class is just as valuable. It's another way of learning. We seem to be comfortable with that idea for children, that children can watch something before joining in. And I wish more people would say that for adults. It's the same. So because you're watching from the side, perhaps people go across the floor several times. I mean, going across the floor is a huge exposed feeling. And if you want to watch it a couple times, people going across the floor, that's fantastic. You are visually doing it in your mind, in your body. And I speak about this thing we have in dance called marking, which dancers know is that you are maybe doing it with your hands instead of your whole body, and you're in your mind going through the steps so that when it's your turn, you feel almost like you've done it once already. So those little things I try to let people know before they come to class. First time people coming to my class, come in absolutely anything. You don't have to have all the gear. You don't have to have the proper shoes and all of that. Come in what makes you feel most comfortable.
I think those are great accommodations for adults. And, it's so important sometimes to just come into the class to be comfortable and to be able to maybe watch the first time, because I think there's a lot of comfort in more discomfort in what you don't know. So I think coming and being able to observe, even for me, I've been dancing my whole life and doing across the floor exercises. And I'm always like, I don't want to go first. Everyone's watching me.
Exactly. So actually I do very sort of until I know a group really well. I dance with my class pretty much the whole time. And there's a feeling of, community, and we're all doing this together, and that thing of nobody's watching you. So there's a lot of that in the class.
Yeah, that's great. It's such a community feel in adult ballet classes anyway. So having everyone sort of dance together, including you, I can imagine contributes to that. And I know that you teach 2 classes. You teach a shy adult ballet class and a silver swans gliding class that I wanted to talk about. And I was wondering if you could kind of break down what those classes are and some of the benefits that they provide for dancers and some of your favorite moments from teaching those.
So I came up with shy and gliding. Shy meaning somebody who has never stepped into a studio setting. They may be doing other exercises or yoga or something, or they might not have done that either. So coming as an adult to a class situation in a dance studio and then starting to learn this way of moving and style of dance called ballet. The gliding is for those who have either taken it in their youth or who have been dancing all along. And so, but of course, as it happens, I'm sure in adult classes, because I don't have 15 classes a week, there are different levels within those classes, and I seem to be able to accommodate to that. I'm actually so impressed that I have some people who really have never done ballet, and they're in with some people who have danced, and it seems to all work out, giving adapted exercises. And the benefits are, I have seen people who felt very isolated, who now have a community. There's laughter, there's joy. And the big thing about one of the things in my ballet classes that is one of my goals is to make it a wonderful thing to feel and to express in an artistic way. So it's not about getting the steps, but it's the whole picture of that you feel you are dancing. So coming to class and feeling by the end that, yes, you have danced. You've not only learned a whole bunch of little individual things in between, but that you could, go away and speak to somebody about this place that you go to do this dance. Yeah, and the benefits, as we said before, the confidence, the postures change, the strength and flexibility. And then I teach also a lot of repertoire. I speak about the history of ballet, and people in this age group that I teach love that. They've been subscribers to the ballet for decades. They know the music and the repertoire really well. And so finding out and having those discussions, I learn from them just as much, all their experiences from all the different places they come from. That's wonderful to have a place to go and discuss about, because sometimes you go to a performance, and I've always thought at intermission would be a great, if we had a little sign up saying, discussions. Yeah, because if you go to the ballet by yourself or even with one other person, it'd be nice to have just a small group, 5 people right away on the moment discussing what's going on in the performance. So we do those kind of things.
Well, that's so cool. Yeah, I think that's so beneficial. I was at a performance a few weeks ago, and I was sitting next to a woman. We were kind of talking about the show, and at intermission, she was like, I'm not sure that I quite understand. I want to learn more about this choreographer, this, repertoire that they're doing. And there wasn't a ton of time to talk, during intermission. So it would have been great to have, some time set aside to have a discussion about that, because I think a lot of people do come and they're interested in learning more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they know so much. I mean, they have looked up or researched, the choreographer or the set designer. Or, oh my gosh, yeah. And I take the group also. I'm very, very lucky with my connection with the company that I take a group every year to see the production center of the National Ballet. It's huge, where they keep where they design and store sets and props from way back, and the travel containers, and it's a super fun tour. So yeah, there's lots of learning there as well.
Oh, what a cool experience. I know in your answers, you keep coming back to this concept of laughter and joy in your classes. And I think that's so great because, in ballet, sometimes it is, you're taught to be very quiet and to just kind of be very structured. And sometimes, dance is a joyful thing, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way in technique class. So I think it's great that you're introducing those elements and making it well-rounded, bringing your dancers to, as you said, tour the production facility or, go to these shows and have these discussions. I think that's a really important part of dance education too.
sometimes in the bar, we get so sometimes, tighter and tighter on the bar exercises. And so I don't know when it was, but anyway, many years ago, just to break that up, I was thinking of ways to break it up besides saying, come on, let's dance our tendus or, dance the music instead of thinking about so much the exercise. But now around the third or fourth exercise, I ask everyone to, turn to the person beside you and just check in how they're doing. And of course, coming out of COVID, that means a lot. Everybody's checking in. And that really, just lets people breathe and have little eye contact. And it's those tiny little things you can do that shift the way people then come to the bar and do the next exercise, because we are there to dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but those check-ins are so important. I can imagine also in making someone who's, coming to a class for the first time feel more comfortable or, has only taken a couple classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the name Shy Ballet. I think that's a great title. And I know that, we talked a little bit about this already, but for dancers who, I guess adult dancers who have no experience with ballet whatsoever are coming to it brand new, is there anything else that you wanted to say about, accommodations that you make for them or things that they should expect out of a ballet class or, be asking of their instructor or the students around them maybe?
Well, in my ballet class, I do these patterns that we were speaking about at the beginning, always, to all kinds of different music, and that gets you grounded in your place. So if your teacher is not doing, if they start in a traditional ballet way where you come in and you go right to the bar, maybe that's something you could do. You could ask, could I come early to class? Which I'm sure, that's typical, 15 minutes at least. So I would really suggest getting there early, getting in the space, do one walk around the studio, use your eyes, use your breath to look around the space and just let your body be in this unfamiliar place if you don't know a studio well. And sit on the floor, stand up. I know it sounds like we call it pedestrian movement, but it really does ground you. And then if you have ballet slippers or whatever shoe wear you're wearing, then you put that on. You just sort of take your time being in the space and seeing if there's somebody you could, say hello to at the beginning so that it doesn't end up being, as you were saying, that you come in the studio's completely quiet. And I think though in most adult classes, there's, conversation and
it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. So, but that's what I would suggest, the coming in, really give yourself time. I know, the adults I teach, they are such busy seniors. They're running around doing any number of things. So some of them do run in literally to the minute, which is fine because we know each other now. But if you're brand new to coming, really take the time for your first couple classes to get there with enough time.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Get there with enough time so you don't have to rush and also just get to know the space. What you were talking about pedestrian movement actually leads really well into my next question, because I know that you've spoken a lot about how much you love choreographic work that celebrates the everyday. And it kind of ties back to what we were talking about at the beginning about how dance is a very intrinsically human experience. It starts when we're babies. So why is this type of choreography and movement important to you? And how do you see it changing the way that dancers sort of engage with ballet?
Well, I guess how it changes them coming to ballet is seeing, again, what is at the core of the movement. So ballet is a stylized movement form, but what is the core of the movement? And all our movements, no matter how stylized, we can simplify them into those 8 patterns that I spoke about at the beginning. So I think that seeing it in that more simple form allows people to find it in their own way and apply it to themselves and how their body moves. And why I'm interested in pedestrian and everyday movements, I don't know. Actually, I just find beauty in what might be considered simple things. I mean, maybe it comes from the modern dance ideas and things that started being developed in that technique were about that. Ballet was this fairy tale, getting away from what's down here on earth. And modern dance was to bring it back to humans and human feelings and expressions and what we go through and activism. And that relates to certain movements. You know what it is? It's when I see, and it can be children as well, like when I work in the communities here, children who haven't had any dance, formalized dance training. When I see them moving and thinking, I just think it's so beautiful because it's very authentic. It's really expressing that moment rather than a very well-rehearsed dancer who, they have to work hard to make us believe in the audience that it's for the first time because they've rehearsed it so much. So yeah, I think that's what it is it's that newness of arriving in the movement and you can see the person still really thinking about it. I just find that really a beautiful moment.
I love that. I think this is such a beautiful concept and, noticing the beauty of the everyday and everyday movements. I think that not everybody slows down enough to notice those things. And you're someone who really notices those moments and kind of stretches them out into choreography or into, movement.
I hope so.
And I think it makes a huge difference, as an instructor, also as a dancer.
I mean, the everyday movements, there was a whole bunch. I mean, I'm sure there's still people, modern dance choreographers doing this sort of thing. I'm not doing the mime, take the coffee cup off the shelf.
Right.
But it's, how to make those into a choreographed dance without it mime. Actually, you're just reminding me when I go into schools, I do a little demonstration of, I'm going to show you two things. You tell me which one is dance. And I don't even use the word mime. I just say which one is dance. So to me, I do a very mime kind of movement sequence. And then I do the same sequence, but in, more full body with expression and what you and I would probably call dance. And they immediately get it. It's so clear to them. And I love that even without having much exposure to different dance styles. Oh yeah, that one's the dance. And then we talk about why and just love it. The child who says, because it made me feel you were telling a story or, any number of things. Yeah. So
I love that so much. That's such a cool way to, bring dance into, school setting. And what I love about this sort of celebrating the everyday is that you're bringing dance into all of these everyday situations, in hospitals and schools, museums. And I think that's so important for, democratizing the art form, making it accessible to everyone. I just got the notification we have 10 minutes left on this meeting, so I'm going to have to jump ahead in my questions. We've had a great conversation so far. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, I guess, what's next for you? Are there any, upcoming projects, performances, anything you're working on that you want to share with the listeners?
Sure. So just over the last few years, I've started working with a storyteller who goes to storytelling festivals all around the world, presenting traditional folk tales and in performance. So sometimes with a musician. And so we've started working together, and huge challenge for me to dance and create, I guess you'd call it choreography, where it's not literal. So, if there's a character in his story as he's telling it, I don't want to be the character for the audience. I want to be the emotion and create the atmosphere. So we've developed a repertoire of about an hour performance. So several stories. And so we've been invited in the fall to the Czech Republic. So I'm super excited. I'm very excited to do that. So we're working on some things for that. And then with my Silver Swans, I have a big project called Reverence. And I'm hoping to create with a storyteller, with a musician, choreographic work for them, on them, about, how dance where dance has been in their life, whether they've come to it later in life or just how it's sort of affected them and their stories around that.
How cool. Well, that sounds like a lot of exciting projects ahead. So I'll definitely, in our show notes, I'll link to your newsletter and to your website so listeners can keep track of all of that. And I can't wait to hear more. I could ask you a million more questions. I'm so fascinated by the work that you're doing. But we are coming toward the end. And we have one section called Petit Allegro. It's just kind of some quick, fun questions, if you're okay with doing that.
I'll try to be quick.
Well, I always like to start off asking, what's one thing that you always have to have in your dance bag when you're teaching or at a rehearsal?
Water.
Yes, a popular answer. That's so important. Do you have a favorite ballet, either that you've seen or that you've performed in?
Maybe Giselle. I love being on stage for Giselle.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous ballet. Do you have any funny backstage stories or maybe some funny stories from the classroom that you can share?
My gosh, so many. Funny things do happen. Oh my gosh. Well, my sort of send-off ballet from the Dutch National was by Carolyn Carlson, who is an American, very statuesque, wonderful dancer choreographer who became an étoile at the Paris Opera. She came and did a huge, wonderful piece called Shamrock at the Dutch National. And I was the barefoot ballerina who had a gun, and I got to swing on a swing, and I got to do all these funny, crazy things. And I was in a sylph costume, bare feet, and I had to be brought at intermission by a stagehand and put into the turf, the fake grass that was on the orchestra pit that was elevated, and it had blue poppies stuck in the grass all over. And he had to place me in there. So funny things happened there. This or that didn't happen. And where's the stagehand? And do I tiptoe out? And oh my gosh, my gun went off. And, mishaps on stage.
Yeah, a million different things. But those are the things that make it fun. Live theater is always an experience. So, yeah. And then the last question I always like to ask everyone is, in a perfect world, what would you want ballet to look like?
I would like it to look like, I think, a little bit how we are finding to connect with its grace, its beauty, its elegance, and yet how it can be in the everyday. I would like it to be joyful for sure.
Yeah, joyful.
Joyful, and yet it can be deep sorrow. It can be all the array of emotions that we don't have words for, but that we feel. I'd like it that we feel something or impacted as we watch and perform ballet.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I think that's a perfect answer. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to, get ballet to that place. And I'm excited to, follow all of the projects that you have coming up. And just for any listeners who are interested in learning more, connecting with you, where can they connect with you on social media or your newsletter?
Yeah. So my website, cabridance.com. And I'm on Instagram under my name, Annemarie Cabri Dance. And yeah, I do have a newsletter. Summer school is announced. That's super exciting time at the end of August. Different things happening. So email is probably, I'm sort of old school. So send me an email, and that's the best way to connect up.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll link to your website and your Instagram in the show notes if anyone wants to connect with you. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Everything you do, Elizabeth. I think it's just amazing. I was so happy to read, and I'm listening to your podcasts, and just amazing people you have interviews. Just amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm really happy you reached out. I'm so glad to have met you.
Take care.
Yeah, take care. I love talking to Annemarie. It's clear she has so much passion for movement, and I learned so much from our conversation about how movement defines our experiences in everyday lives as humans. If you're interested in connecting with her and learning more, there's a link to her website, cabridance.com, and her Instagram in the show notes. She also has a Silver Swans newsletter, and I'll link to the registration page for that, as well as the registration page for her Silver Swans summer session for anyone who's interested in possibly attending. This is an opportunity to explore adapted choreography from classic story ballets. It's led by Annemarie, and these sessions feature a ballet class designed specifically for older adults and include guest appearances, workshops, and live music. Registration for the 2025 season is open now. After I spoke with Annemarie, she had some additional thoughts about how everyday movement inspires dance and choreography and the future she envisions for the ballet world. She sent me her thoughts in an email, and they were so beautifully written, and they posed some important questions for the ballet community to consider. I wanted you to be able to read what else she had to say, so with her permission, I'm including her thoughts in the show notes under the section that says Additional Thoughts from Annemarie. So be sure to check it out. Thanks to Annemarie for taking the time to speak with me, and to all of you for listening. The Adult Ballet Studio will be back next month on Tuesday, May 6th with a brand new episode and a special guest. In the meantime, you can connect with me on social media at eblasfield and through email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or to suggest a future guest. Also, the Adult Ballet Studio is now on YouTube at my channel eblasfield91, so check us out there too. And as always, happy dancing everybody, and see you at the bar.